Elam, you said you didn't fit the traditional industry mold, so you built your own. What's the Ojas way of doing real estate?
I ultimately got into this industry and I absolutely love the content immediately. I love the content before I even knew that you could monetize it or that you could make a career out of it. But I felt like there were some things, especially the more internal competitive nature, that just didn't identify with how I had always thought my career would look. And I expected it to be more of a collaborative, teamwork-driven experience. As I saw different models of things being done, it helped me guide how we now work together at Ojas and kind of laid the foundation for this mentality of abundance mindset and a rising tides lifts all ships.
How do you continue to collaborate across 16 brokers?
Sorry to clarify, we have 12 brokers for operations team members. If you count me as one of those brokers, I'm kind of operating in both spheres depending on the day. We are very intentional about recording what tenants we're talking to and who's working on what. So we started in July of 2020, which gave us the opportunity to start remotely, virtually, because that was accepted at that time. And so it allowed us to build digitally in a way that I think we otherwise wouldn't have had the opportunity to. Our culture is very much recording notes with your clients. We use Asana, and that helps us all stay organized and it's searchable to the whole team.
What have you learned over the last 6 years of what it takes to be a leader, in particular a brokerage organization?
First of all, it's leading people and managing a team is the highest of highs and the lowest of lows. There's nothing more rewarding from my perspective than pouring into a team member and then just watching them soar on their own accord and really reinvest into themselves and not being afraid to make swift decisions more quickly, because a lot of times your gut is telling you something and then you validate it with 5 other entrepreneurs or other industries that have more experience under their belt to validate situations with, validate my gut feelings with. It's, usually the right decision, even if it may not be in the short term or immediately popular with your team members.
Just moving on to Nashville. So maybe describe the scene when you started Ojas and what Nashville and how it was perceived out there to where it is today.
So I'm from here originally. I left for college, moved back. When I moved back to Nashville, I was starting to see things percolate. I had gone to school on the West Coast, and that gave me a tremendous amount of exposure. I was meeting a lot of people moving back from school that seemed to have similar interests that I did. Were saying like, gosh, I wish there was this, I wish there was that. And so I started to realize, okay, there's other customers that are similar to me that have, whether they've lived other places or not, they're more connected than ever with social media and with just the connectivity of our world, and they travel and they are not quite satisfied with what's here in Nashville. And at some point the brands are going to catch on. So started calling brands probably a little prematurely, because it really was the pandemic and the influx of people overnight. Invested in my own career, relationships, would go to New York, sleep on a friend's couch, stay there for a week, walk the streets, figure out the new concepts, come back home, call them, and just sort of had this like tenacity and almost like a game with myself of who can I get on the phone and what exciting brands might be interested to talk about Nashville. And that really, fast forward, paid dividends in 2020 when I decided to start Ojas, because that foundation had been established. Nashville's just continued to blow me away ever since then. It's amazing, especially growing up here and knowing what it was then, to see all of the concepts that are interested.
Yeah, it's amazing how that effort and those phone calls really can pay dividends, but you have to stick with it. I'm always laughing at how many times it's that 4th or 5th phone call that ends up, getting the person on the line and they act like nothing ever happened. It's like, I've been meaning to call you.
Totally. Persistence is the key.
What about residential units? You're seeing a ton of them come in, around the Gulch. And when I was there, I just saw cranes everywhere. Are you at the point already where you feel like the number of residential units means that the daily needs guys are going to be coming in with the groceries and the pharmacies, or is it still, in progress?
Some of them have already come in. but it's mostly just one location on the urban side of things. It's more about just the lack of space and the lack of more institutional landlords that they're used to doing deals with that have entered the market, that in terms of, what's halting expansion. Yeah. And then I think we oversupplied our residential when interest rates are super low, as a lot of places did. And we're kind of in the process of catching up. So it will take that next wave of development for those concepts that a lot of times often require like a special purpose build, but it doesn't make sense for them to take a single story building for 20 years of term when it's ultimately a development site. It just might not be primed right now for that.
12 South, the Gulch, definitely the neighborhoods people are the most familiar with, but talk to me a little bit about, the other neighborhoods, the other parts of Nashville that are emerging that you're excited about.
So I think there's the traditional neighborhoods that are kind of having this resurgence, if you will, that nationals have had on the radar for a while, but they're now, as concepts that have been there for a long time, probably too long, are starting to phase out. There's becoming a new renewed interest, largely Green Hills, Franklin, and Belmead, and Brentwood as well. But in terms of urban neighborhoods, Wedgwood, Houston, East Nashville, Germantown are really the ones that are really like percolating and super exciting to me right now. Wedgwood, Houston, I always give a caveat that I live in Wedgwood, Houston, and our office is in Wedgwood, Houston. So I'm a bit biased, but I have invested pretty heavily here personally for a reason. That all happened in large part because it was cheap space and it wasn't a great part of town. But a lot of times that's for the making of a great kind of like cultural epicenter as money starts to flow and development dollars start to flow into the city. What anchored the neighborhood and opened in 2022 is Soho House. And as most listeners probably know, that typically is a big catalyst for kicking things off to see all the things that you see in meatpacking and South Congress and other places that you see Soho houses in the country. It was also named an opportunity zone in 2019, and that has also spurred a lot of development. And it's 5 minutes from downtown, but also super convenient off I-65 from the southern suburbs. I could go into talking about Germantown and East Nashville as well. Equally exciting things happening in both of those. All three of those neighborhoods have changed dramatically, and there's some awesome spots that national, but also local, that have opened that I'd love to take people to.
Tell me about a project you're working on that you want to highlight.
We're fortunate with Ojas to be able to work for some really amazing developers that, have largely come into Nashville from the outside as a collective, as kind of discussed. We live in different neighborhoods. And so always, where possible, kind of pair people with projects that are in their neighborhoods, because if they're walking by the project every day to get coffee at their local coffee shop, there's no one that's better going to understand who and what really exists and what the neighbors in the area want for that project. As discussed, Wedgwood, Houston, being able to work on a variety of projects here has been amazing, just part of the last few years, and kind of being able to shape the neighborhood that I literally walk from my house to my office most days. We are working on one right now that is, I would say, more retail dominant than the other ones that we've worked on. So really special purpose designed for retail. I've been involved with since the very beginning, from finding the land all the way to now leasing and through design and starting to put the puzzle pieces together for the leasing for late summer groundbreaking. So that's called Pagan Gallery. ULI is having their spring meeting in Nashville in May. And it's just something I'm excited about because I think it's such a great opportunity for our city. Brings so many decision makers from all over the country. PRIA, which is Institutional Real Estate Conference, is being hosted here. We're under, not real estate related exactly, but we're under construction on the large new NFL stadium, host the Super Bowl in a few years. So yeah, just lots of growth all around and really exciting things for our city.